And the reason for that is when we think of MRI, this is what comes to mind, right? These large scale systems, they're several $1 million plus another $1 million to site. Huge infrastructure needs, huge electricity needs. You have cryogens, you have technicians, you need huge power to drive them, but you get really beautiful data. But as a result of all those needs, they're really restricted to either hospitals or to really cutting edge imaging centers. And so, again, this kind of goes back to our problem of how do we get people from the areas that we're interested in collecting data from into these systems. And so certainly there are mobile systems. This is what tends to come to mind, right? These big 18-wheeler trucks that wheel up to the side of a hospital, plug into a large docking system at the hospital, and can do PET or 1.5T MRI. I think there's a few 3Ts out there. But this isn't necessarily mobile, right? And trying to get one of these into Appalachia or into some of the tribal communities that we've talked about is going to be really challenging. So what can we do? Well, there's been this recent renaissance, as it were, in these low field MRI systems, really bringing in the idea of doing really quite pioneering and high quality neuroimaging, structural imaging to start, at very low field. So not at 3T, but down at 64 millitesla. And the difference between those, obviously, is the infrastructure goes away, right? And the cost and the power requirements, right? So you kind of get an idea of the power requirement differences between, say, a GE Premier or a Siemens Prisma being what's required to power a nuclear fast attack submarine, moving down to an espresso coffee maker. And so your major challenge in the morning is figuring out whether you want coffee first or your MRI scan and which one you should plug into the wall at the same time. But we've been using this technique. I think we were one of the first groups actually to scan an infant using the hyperfine system. And we've been playing around with this for about the last year. Again, this is one of our consortium's goals, really to push the idea of remote novel MRI collection. But again, this is still in our lab. But if we look at the data, yes, it's not your high-end Siemens Connectome scanner or Prisma scanner, but it's on par with about a 1.5T system. And so the question then is that good enough to get out into the community and actually acquire data on a range of kiddos, particularly when we think of the cost-benefit ratio. When we think about these systems, the cost per scan is probably closer to about $50 as opposed to $1,000, right? So the scale there becomes quite different. But the real question is can we actually can we take this to a home, right? And this is something that I broached Michelle a couple months ago and asked if we could try, and she was enthusiastic. I think she probably thought I was crazy. But we thought, can we take a Ford Transit van and can we put a scanner in there? And can we move that to a house and actually do remote MRI scanning? The idea here really sort of pushing on a transit because you can get that anywhere on the world, basically. You can go over any roads, any dirt roads, into any rural setting. You don't need you don't need a special license. You don't need anything. And I thought what we'd do at this point really is kind of give you a show. So we're about 25 minutes into this presentation, but I'm going to switch a little bit. Just a second. So I'm going to pop over here and turn this off, and turn that off, and go on to video. So hopefully you can see me pop up here. Here we go. Here we go. So hopefully everyone can see me. So what might be weird is that I'm not in a lab. I'm actually at a participant's house right now. So I'm going to put on my mask here, and we're going to go out and we're going to scan someone. So we've actually driven our mobile MRI scanner here. And what I'd like to show, with your permission, is the first ever residential MRI stream that's ever been done. So I'm going to just turn this and head on outside, and hopefully this all works. So here's our group. And we have our participant down here. Lucas is going to hop into our scanner. Our scanner is right over here in our Ford Transit van. We have a couple of people here. We're probably very close to Massachusetts state rules about how many people can be outside. But we're here. I want to show you the actual scanner just so you know it's no tricks. But here it is. Right. So we just have our MRI scanner inside of our transit van. We have some safety equipment that we'll talk about. And we're gonna get Lucas in there. And while he's getting scanned, we'll talk a little bit about how this system works and what's going on. So he's just gonna hop up in there, pop up there, and while he's hopping in there, we'll take a couple little seconds just to give an idea of what's happening here. So again, we've placed the hyperfine system into basically about a $30,000 van. Now the challenge, of course, that we run into is we have a 1,400-pound device inside a 3,500-pound vehicle that's traveling down a road at 60 miles an hour. Now, if you remember back to your statics and dynamics courses, that's good as long as the velocities of both of those objects is the same. When they become different, bad things start to happen. So yeah, all right. So next, Lexi's going to go and start this scanning. So everything runs off an iPad, so we can just wheel up. We have either a hotspot in the van, or in this case, we have a hotspot with us. So our iPads are cellular, so we can just start going. All good?
Yep, all good.
And you can hear the scanner going. Hopefully you can hear that. So it's scanning away. And maybe while we're here, so we've actually worked with an auto body shop in Providence. And unfortunately, Paul is not here. Paul from New England Collision, but they've worked throughout a couple of weeks, really putting everything together. Again, really doing a lot of safety work and actually building this thing in so it doesn't rock as we're driving down the road. We can go over bumps and whatnot, go up hills, down hills. Obviously, be safe in case we get into an accident or someone hits us. So a lot of work, but also we wanted to have the flexibility. So right now it's in the van, but we want to be able to take it out, right? If we're going to, say, a school or to a community center, we want to be able to take the scanner out, move that into, say, a cafeteria and do some scanning there. So we've built it in so that everything is removable. Everything can be taken out with a self-packing forklift. So not a real forklift, but one that you can actually take with you. And everything is very mobile. We also happen to have on site. So we actually, because we're close, we're in Dighton, Massachusetts, which is just about, I guess, a couple hours from Guilford, Connecticut, which is where Hyperfine is based. So we actually have Brian and his colleague here. So yeah, Brian, just kind of going through, if you want to tell us a little bit about the Hyperfine system while it's kind of doing its thing in the background there.
Sure, if you like. So now the Hyperfine portable scanner is portable in two ways. Normally we wheel around hospitals or EDs, but we put in a vehicle so it can travel around the street. And I want to point out there are no cables going into the vehicle at all.
That's right.
The scanner is operating completely standalone inside. It's being powered by a lithium battery box pack that provides plenty of wattage for it. The scanner uses about the same amount of power as a kitchen appliance. And we haven't modified the scanner in any way. So it's still the same FDA cleared device that we put into hospitals and EDs and rehab hospitals. So, and Eddie is one of our RF engineers. So he put a screening box around the lithium battery pack to keep that screen nice and well for the scanner. And Lexi is going to be showing you images as they come through. We reconstruct images as the data comes in.
Are those coming through? All right, so we have some images that are just starting to pop up. So this thing is actually collecting data as we go along.
Yeah, it's about 3.5 minutes into a 5.5 minute scan, and it'll update every 10%, and the images just get crisper and crisper as it gets more and more of the case-based data, and it reconstructs all the data it has at that moment. We offer T1, T2, flare, and diffusion-weighted imaging with ADC map.
Perfect. Yeah, and then as part of you might be aware that as part of our group's larger initiative, this is sort of the step one of really getting rural within the U.S., but we want to get rural globally. And so as part of our relationship as well with other with both the NIH as well as the Gates Foundation, we're working on ways of maybe trying to get into different contrasts, be it into functional imaging, not EPI based, but likely some sort of steady state based functional imaging, certainly into ASL, magnetization transfer. I think, Brian, you have some quantitative imaging, but that's an ongoing project that we're working on, but certainly thinking of getting into the quantitative imaging, which certainly plays back to my heart. But we're cruising along. We still have about 2 minutes to go. Our participant's doing well in there. He's just kind of hanging out. So again, a T1 and T2 scan takes about 12 minutes or so to acquire all told. So you really could imagine wheeling up to a school, running a classroom through in a couple hours over lunch, for example,
and at the same time doing cognitive assessments in the background. Cognitive assessments in the background. So, so you could imagine, as I say, going into a school setting, scanning a series like a classroom, for example, and at the same time bringing along your RAs to do cognitive assessments. That's what will happen here after the scan is done. They'll go in and do a whisk on the kiddo, and then off you go. And like I say, for a fixed cost of a system, so the van, the system, everything that goes along with it, as well as the people inside of it, for a break-even point of about 1,000 scans over a year, it's about $50 to $60 a scan. So it's not a huge amount when you think about it compared to your static system. And so with evolving improvements, we think we can get down to even cheapen that up a little bit if we can go faster. But certainly, getting more and more crisp data, perhaps even taking a little bit longer. But
1 minute to go.
we're almost done. All right, we're gonna start feeling like we're doing charades. All right.
And another benefit being in the vehicle is the 5 Gauss line is essentially fully contained inside the vehicle.
Right. So that was the other thing I think that we wanted to talk about. So you can kind of see that hula hoop thing potentially at the top there. That is your 5 Gauss line, right? So everything is contained, so you don't have to worry about, for example, driving down the road and other cars becoming close to you. Your 1965 Chevelle that's mainly metal suddenly drifting close to your machine, and certainly don't have to worry about people with pacemakers or other implants walking beside the van, right? So we wanted to be obviously very careful and crisp about that. All right, getting down to it.
Getting down there. Almost done.
5 seconds.
Okay, 5 seconds to go, and then we'll show you the first images, and then off we go.
Right,
So it's
all
Even
done.
open up the van a little more.
all right. So we can open this up. We get a sense of. Way to go, big guy. Good job. Our images are reconstructing. We'll get you those in just a second. Okay, yeah, looking good. So of course, like everyone, he's interested in seeing his brain, just like everyone else. All right, and we have a set of images. So we can kind of show you those.
Final stage of reconstruction.
So
Takes about another minute after this exam ends, and
yeah, so we have a little bit more time, so we'll bring that back up. But in essence, there you go. You guys have all just been privy to the first ever MRI scan done at someone's house. So the idea now of actually bringing these things out, doing scanning, and we can kind of show you a little bit more if we hop in here, just to give you an idea. So it's a head-only system. You can put people in. Oh, yeah.
show the power source.
Here's our power source inside of here. So it is literally just some lithium battery ion. It looks really cool. Like everything, it looks just pretty cool.
It can run for another 3 hours.
So yeah, we have about 4 hours of scanning on here. If we want to, we can hook it up to a regular extension cord and continue scanning if we want. You don't have to go just off batteries, but certainly you can take it into any rural setting, for example, onto a tribal nation or even into rural Pennsylvania or rural, well, here, for example, and scan without a problem for 3-4 hours or so, and then off you go. So yeah, is it all done? All right, so we'll pop it up. So now thinking, even if this isn't necessarily good enough for, obviously we're talking about images that, are on par.
The name will appear. It's probably got another 7 or 8 seconds. And
all right. So we'll keep that going. So, and we can send these around when we get done as to what these actually look like when they're fully reconstructed. Yeah, 2 seconds to go, 1 second to go, and then we can do some nice. Oh, there we go.
Flat. And then you can scroll through what's coming through.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Looks great.
So there you go.
There you go.
All right. So yeah. So I'll turn this back onto ourselves here. But that's it. So there you go. We can actually do scanning here. Now, whether you're thinking about doing this as just a full scan and actually this being your primary data collection, or you can imagine looking this up. We have an epilogue system here. You can actually use that inside the Faraday cage and scan and get leads on that. So for about 50 to 60K, you can drive around and pair that up with your EEG system, get really good source localization on your system, But lots of really cool and tons of possibilities here. I think we're just scratching the surface. Literally, this is scan one, right? This is Genesis, as it were. We have lots of opportunities to learn as we go forward. But I think what the hope is that we're really kind of setting a new stage, right? Really thinking of now population studies with MRI that has just not been possible, particularly when you think of, almost being able to replicate the NIH study of normal, typical development, healthy development, that 1.5T study, and we could basically do 10 times the number of participants for 1/10 the cost. So, completely game changer in terms of thinking about imaging studies. I think we're getting close, and I'm happy to take some questions. Maybe we'll just give a quick view of the group here as we're here. Have everyone give a quick wave. I'll go back inside and make sure that we're good, and then any questions I'm happy to answer. But way to go, guys! That's it.
Sean,
So
that
cool.
was fantastic. That's amazing. There's so many comments in the chat about how cool it is, how exciting. Hopefully you'll get a chance to read them, but I'm going to let people ask questions if they have them. Felice Borsi-Rudin asked a question, but I think it was actually addressed. What type of shielding is necessary for the scanner, and are there any safety issues for techs or participants? I think you addressed that.
Yeah, there's none. There's no shielding necessary. It's literally self-shielded, as it were, within that literally a hula hoop. So think of a hula hoop size. That's your 5 Gauss line. So you can take that, and yeah, no need. You can literally, so even in a hospital or in a school setting, you don't have to worry about MRI safe utensils in the cafeteria, for example. You literally just roll up, put it wherever you want, and off you go, right? So again, a complete game changer, and sort of that paradigm shift of thinking about where you can scan kind of goes away. You can literally pull it right into a NICU and scan within a NICU without worrying about MR compatibility and that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's crazy.
Fantastic. So in the lab, how young have you gone into imaging so far?
We've gone down to term. So
Yeah.
we can, same basically, we actually wheel it up next to our 3T just outside the door. So kids come out of the 3T asleep, and we just pull them over and we scan them in the hyperfine. Then we can actually do a comparison between the two, and are working to improve the imaging quality on the system. So yeah, we can go from basically birth all the way into adulthood. So no challenges there.
Great. The other question I have is, the truly mobile systems are very exciting. Fantastic job. What is the estimated cost of the mobile scanner, including cost of van, which would be required? So you said $50K for the scanner.
Yeah,
right?
so the scanner is $50K. That Ford Transit van 2500 with the high roof, not the extra high roof, but just the high roof and just long, not extra long, was I think $32,000. We put in about another $6 grand or $7 grand, depending on what Paul comes back to us with on the safety bit. To basically where we've built a NASCAR car inside of our Amazon Prime van, as it were. So whatever that comes back, so you're getting now up to about $90K, and then we have an lift to take it in and out, and that was about $6 grand. So all in, you're getting close to about $100K. I guess total. You don't necessarily need the lift unless you actually want to take it in and out. It might be easier just to put it in place depending on your use case. But when you think of $100K versus 3.4 million, and that's fixed cost, that's all you're going to pay, right?
That's
you're not
great.
going to be adding to that in terms of more cryogens and all that sort of stuff. So that's
And
it.
if you could get Amazon to put a sticker on it, they could pay for it.
We're working
right?
on it. Or worst case, I take the van out, I do Amazon at night as my second job, and then, yeah, off we go.
Excellent. There's some more questions. So, hi, Sean, this is so cool. With respect to image quality, how detailed can you get with respect to isolating different structures? Also, how robust is this to participant motion?
Awesome. Yeah, those are great questions and really important. So yeah, in terms of your volumetric analysis, think back to high quality T1 scans, and that's what you can do. So certainly, again, you're not getting down to your 0.5 millimeter, 0.8 millimeter isotropic data that you're getting on your 3T system, but they're really, really beautiful, gorgeous images for sort of, again, a high end 8-channel 1.5T system. And so doing your usual standard, we actually have analysis now going on the cortical, putting it through FreeSurfer. You can put it through FSL and get out the structures. They actually line up. There's a bias, as you can imagine, because you just don't have the resolution, but the correlation is really high compared to 3T to hyperfine. In terms of motion, that's something that we're also working on, but it is actually incredibly resilient to motion. So we have not actually had to scan some of our infants asleep. So we've literally scanned infants awake with mom holding a soother in their mouth while they've been scanned, and the images look brilliant. So it's definitely more resilient than what you would normally see on the 3T system, where, as we saw yesterday, even a small amount of motion can cause some pretty serious degradation.
That's amazing. So anybody else have questions? If you raise your hand, we can make sure you're unmuted. I'll scan real quick. Just a lot of very impressive comments. This is really, really amazing.
It's all down to you, Michelle. You allowed us to be crazy.
Well, I said yes.
Yeah. Well,
That's
yourself, Pinky, and others at the program office gave us the ability to go and do it. Oh, that's a good question. How do we integrate this with 3T data? So on that note, one project that we have going on right now is really trying to drive AI technology on doing image quality transfer. So in the case of taking on the same participants, scanning them on both field strengths, to improve the quality of the hyperfine image by transferring some of that information over to the lower field system, but also figuring out how to bring them together. Yeah, that's another good question, Andy. fMRI and DWI. So DWI works already, at least on an easy scale, right? So your usual tensor, 6-direction tensor type approach. In terms of getting into more sophisticated sort of high B value, that's going to be a bit more of a challenge, but we think that there's some additional other ways. So basically the challenge with this system is with the gradient capacity, you can't really do EPI. Right. So once you removed EPI from your mindset, what can you do? And so thinking about alternative ways to do diffusion imaging with longer diffusion gradients. And then on the functional side, we're looking at steady state based fMRI, so BOSS fMRI type approaches, or maybe supplementing that with ASL or arterial spin labeling type approaches to look at cerebral blood flow and function. So we're getting there, but we've just gotten the scanner here to the house. So now we can work on really optimizing it and getting the rest of the way. So, but those are really good questions. Yeah. Do
you see Jessica's question?
I didn't.
Can you obtain MRS on the hyperfine?
Not yet. No, that we think is going to be a stretch, just given the low field. So, I mean, with MRS, everyone's sort of pushing to high field simply to get the separation, and we're going in the opposite direction. But there might be some interesting ways, physics ways to actually decouple those. Basically, going back to solid state MRI, right, which was done down at these lower fields back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and thinking about how can we take some of those technologies and put them here.